Please listen to this, if you can hear it.
In connection with the ancient Israelites, Jehovah also proved that he is able to protect his people from sicknesses. And he did it when the Israelites remained faithful. Deuteronomy 7:15 foretold in connection with those who escaped from Egypt, Jehovah will take away from you all sickness, and he will not bring upon you any of the terrible diseases that you have known in Egypt. We can trust that Jehovah fulfilled his promise. He did so when the Israelites were faithful.
Okay, that's really interesting. That was governing body member Gerrit Losch, something that Lloyd put up in early December, technically from October. And bizarrely, that's exactly what I've been saying through the whole of this pandemic in relation to Jehovah's Witnesses. And he just hit the nail on the head there. He quoted what I've been referring to, for over a year now, in this protecting his people because they were faithful, protecting them from the ravages of diseases that were affecting the other nations. And my constant bugbear I've had is that Jehovah's Witnesses should be asking themselves, why haven't we been protected? Especially now that we finally have an official figure of how many Jehovah's Witnesses have died worldwide in the pandemic up till the 10th of December, which now is cracking on for 4 weeks ago. So this figure is already out of date. And the figure is 25,658. 25,658. I think the figure is absolutely extraordinary. I thought it was in the thousands, and I've always referenced this in my videos that I believe thousands of witnesses have died, purely because there was a few hundred who died in Italy at the start of the pandemic, and I thought if you take that and over the whole of the world, obviously it's going to be a greater figure over a greater length of time. But 25,000, it's unbelievable. What Tony Morris III goes on to say in his thing released in mid-December, which never came from Lloyd's channel. All of a sudden it came through one of these Jehovah's Witness Facebook sites. He actually goes on to try and get some positiveness out of the fact that they've just lost 25,000 Jehovah's Witnesses. And he says that because obviously they haven't been able to go out and witness, they've said what they've decided to do is concentrate on inactive witnesses. Ones have been active for sometimes decades. And he actually gives a figure that one circuit overseas was bragging that they'd managed to bring back from the spiritual dead, that is 76 people, former Jehovah's Witnesses who had gone inactive, and they'd been contacted by Jehovah's Witnesses, and now they're back in the fold, as it were. And he then remarks that that's the equivalent of a congregation size. So if we take 76 and we then get the figure of 25,658, we now can tell you how many congregations worldwide that have been lost. And the number is staggering. The number is 337 congregations have been lost worldwide in, wow, just under a year, just over a year, whatever, since it started off. I don't know, is it 18 months now, 2 years, I can't remember. But it's a staggering figure. And I can't see any positiveness in this whatsoever. And yet he goes on his little speech, he actually says to the brothers and sisters, there's no need to worry. My God, how can you actually come out and say that when there is no protection at all? How can you say there's no need to worry when 25,000 Jehovah's Witnesses have died? Of course there's a need to worry. He said right at the beginning of the pandemic, when it was only in China and Italy, that Tony Morris, actually said, oh, it doesn't concern me, it doesn't bother me. And I at the time did a video saying, well, that was extraordinary for him to come out with that, because he was protected in Warwick. At the end of the day, it did go to America, and as we know, the death toll in America is staggering, and also it's staggering the amount of people who are not taking their vaccinations either. It is truly unbelievable, and the death toll in there will continue to rise in America. And yet at the time, COVID wasn't really in America. It was like Trump was brushing off as a conspiracy or a bad cold. inject bleach or whatever. And yet Morris was doing the same thing, not to worry about it. I'm not worried about it. This was predicted to come. Was it really predicted to come, Tony, that 25,000 Jehovah's Witnesses were to die? When we think about this, let's think about this more than anything else. When I was a Jehovah's Witness, and this fear is the same fear that still continues up till to date, is that we were worried about something called the persecution during the Great Tribulation. We were worried about the time that the UN would turn on religion worldwide, and that they would close down temples and churches and synagogues and mosques all over the world, and all these people whose family generationally going back maybe 1,000 years in some cases have been worshipping in the same temple, would just accept and go, okay, it was a lot of rubbish anyway. Oh, mumbo jumbo. I don't know why we're grand, I believe that. That all of a sudden, everybody be compliant with the United Nations and just say, oh, okay, fair do. Game's a bogey, not interested anymore. And the only religious group that would say, oh, hold on a second, we still want to go to our Kingdom Halls, would be Jehovah's Witnesses. We still want to attend our places of worship. We still want to go out and preach to people. They'd be the only ones. And at that point, once the UN started turning on Jehovah's Witnesses, and the little video showed you this, we've seen videos of them being rounded up in the bunker, we've seen them, the witnesses surrounded by men with gunfire. At the moment that all of a sudden Jehovah's Witnesses started worldwide being persecuted, apparently that's when Armageddon starts. Apparently that's when, right, let's go boys, we've got to protect our witnesses now. They're actually torturing some of our people on the earth. They're actually torturing them. In some cases they're killing them. We better do something about this. And that's when all of a sudden Armageddon starts. And that's what's been the big fear. When I was younger, fearing, we used to worry about how bad the persecution was going to be, how bad it was going to be when we couldn't meet in the Kingdom Halls, when all the preaching work went underground, when some of our members may actually get tortured or dying. We thought that was the big thing to fear about, the future, and we knew it was coming. Who could have foreseen that COVID-19, even in Jehovah's Witnesses' worst case scenario in relation to the Great Tribulation, the persecution, I'm sure that they never thought that within 2 years that 25,000 members would die, and would die not a nice death, akin to torture. Some of the ways that these people died, gasping for the last bit of breath, of air. It must be awful. And no Jehovah's Witness would have imagined this, but that is what's happened. Isn't it ironic that Jehovah's Witnesses have been fearing what they can see? The United Nations, the governments, armies, illustrations, and not really fearing what they couldn't see, which is just, microbes or whatever, that would kill 25,000 of them. It's unbelievable. It really, really is. And when you go back to Tony Morris's little, segment, they actually say one bit when it comes back to how joyous Jehovah and Jesus are when they see these inactive ones coming back into the fold, the joy they must have. And you think to yourself, well, hold on a second, if they're up in heaven celebrating the few that are coming back, how with 25,000 of them dying, his people on earth, and him doing nothing about it, and his son, what's happening? What sort of party do you have in there? He just going, oh, well, there's another one dead. Well, 3 died today, really? Oh, goodness sake. Oh, love that brother as well. He was a nice brother. What is going on? How in God's name can Tony Morris say that Jesus and Jehovah are celebrating inactive ones coming back when they've lost the equivalent of 337 congregations worldwide in under 2 years? It's what a spin, to sort of try and see a positiveness in that death rate. It's extraordinary. And it comes when it comes down to, again, when you look at what he was saying in Tony Morris's talk. He goes on about you know, the good thing about COVID is that the good thing is that a lot of people learning to, lot of spending because they've got more time in their hand, they're learning to read. Oh, let me think about it. Somebody living or getting to learn to read, give me life any day. It's just a bizarre way of doing things. It's really odd. And when you think about it as well, that the inactive ones coming back, they're the only ones really that Jehovah's Witnesses have been able to speak to, because they've probably all got the details. They've probably got all little cards everywhere in the congregation, former members of the congregation, their home, where they live, their home number, their mobile number, and their email address. And these people, as you know, many Jehovah's Witnesses, when they leave Jehovah's Witnesses, still are feared about Armageddon, still think about signs, still thinks about things that happen in this world, think, oh, maybe they're right, or maybe I've made a mistake, maybe I should go back. They're absolutely ripe for the picking, to get a call. Hello, is that Brother Inactive? Yes, it's Brother Elder here. It's Brother Elder here. How are you getting on? Oh yeah, difficult times, hard to deal with here. Yes, don't you see this COVID as a fulfillment of Jesus' prophecy of the last days? Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, have you thought about coming back? Yeah, but I don't know what to do. Oh, well, it's great. Yeah, we think you should come back to the meetings. Great. Well, are you still the same place? Yes, we are, but you can't attend that Kingdom Hall anymore. Why is that, Brother Elder? Because it's closed down. Ours is closed down, and every other congregation in our country is closed down, and across the planet, they're all closed down. Oh, that's terrible, Brother Elder. I thought Jehovah would have offered some protection. Yes, so would have I, but he didn't. In fact, he's allowed 25,000 of us to die. But anyway, would you like to come on? Yes, well, I tell you what, we're having our meetings on Zoom now. And so, we'll give you the code, and you can sit at your house and attend a virtual reality meeting. I kid you not, the way COVID is going, and it doesn't seem it's going anywhere very quickly. You know, got the Omicron, it took like, what was it? It took like 6 weeks, and it was all over the world. What's next? What's just as, you know, transmittable as Omicron, but as deadly as Delta variant was? What is that the next one that comes? Who knows? But at the end of the day, Jehovah's Witnesses are no longer, except in a few cases, attending Kingdom Halls. So they've got this virtual, you know, eventually the witnesses will be only attending in the sort of meta-universe. So mark my words, we'll all be getting the wee eye sets and the headphones, and they'll actually be walking into this virtual reality meta Kingdom Hall. They'll get to sit next to all their old meta mates, and they'll be able to put up their meta hands and give and walk onto the virtual reality meta platform and give talks to you know, Kingdom Hall full of avatars of themselves. You know, yes, Brother Inactive, we'll get you back in. It's now a meta Kingdom Hall, and we just need to create, you know, your avatar for you. How fat are you? Oh, pretty fat. Okay, we can we can make you thinner. If you've still got hair and I've lost it, or we can make your hair, you know, well, where do we go with this? And to be honest with you, I think that's the way it's going. You know, the Kingdom Halls have been shut now for what? Is it 2 years or something? The Kingdom Halls have been shut for 2 years. Going back to Losch's little thing about how Jehovah protected the Israelites from being afflicted by the illnesses and diseases that were affecting the nations around them. And he did so because they were faithful. So you've got to ask yourself, what is going on? I haven't seen a Jehovah's Witness during the whole of COVID. You don't see them out canvassing at all. You don't see them out carting. They don't chat to the door. I did get that one letter, which I did respond to with you know, no response. Pretty poor, to be honest with you. The thing about it is, another thing that Tony Morris's bit, they're going about this wonderful bit where this woman says that they decided to write to a lot of inactive ones because they had the addresses. And they say they've written to them, and that there's been a good response, but nobody is not everybody has responded, but not anybody has been hostile or ignored the message. The fact that only a few have responded and loads haven't would suggest that maybe they were hostile and they have ignored the message and they've cracked on because they've just thought, wow, you can't come to my door anymore because Jehovah, we were always told that Jehovah would protect his people and there's no protection at all. I wonder what they'd think if they knew that 25,000 of them had died in less than 2 years. So I want to go back to something I brought up in a video at the start of the pandemic, as you know, I think it's it's worth going over this again, is who is to blame for COVID-19. So if we say, first and foremost, that it's something to do with Jehovah and Jesus. Now, why would we say that? Well, because when the disciples asked when Jesus was going to be coming back, he gave them signs, so that the people at that time would know, wow, I think we're living the time period where Jesus is about to return, the second coming of the Lord. And so he gave these signs. Now, how did Jesus know? Of course, every generation from that time onwards, past 2,000 years, have thought it's their time. In fact, the early disciples thought that Jesus was going to come back in their lifetime, because they looked at all the signs that Jesus gave and said, yeah, that's happening, that's happening, that's happening, that's happening. They could all see those signs in their time. In fact, if you go through the history of man, near enough every generation you can look at and say, you know, you can actually look at those signs and say, yeah, that's going on around us right now. But let's ignore those facts. And let's just say that the only time that those signs were all fulfilled would be in the time that we're living in today. How did Jesus know? How did Jesus know that prior to him coming back, prior to the good news getting preached in all the inhabitants of the earth for a witness to all the nations, that the world would be a little bit shit? How did Jesus know? Was it just an accident? He says, I tell you what, you know, I've got to come back 1914-ish in an invisible presence. I've got to come back round about that time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crack ahead now with my TARDIS, and I'll zoom ahead and I'll just see what the state of the earth is. Oh my word, my word indeed. We have world wars, we have food shortages, we have earthquakes, which we're to blame for because we made a shit job of making the earth in the first place. We have pestilences, you know, where there's lawlessness, there's wicked men. My word. Yeah, so that's what I can see is going to happen shortly before I return. So I can just write down these signs. What a coincidence that the earth should be in a really shit place just prior to him coming back. Because imagine if the world wasn't a bad place. Imagine that food shortages had been eradicated. Imagine there hadn't been any wars. Imagine most people lived a healthy lifestyle and maybe died in their 80s, and most people were relatively happy worldwide. Well, the good news of the kingdom would no longer be good news, because most people say, well, why are you bringing this to me for? You know, I've got a good life. Things are pretty good. There's no wars. There's no food shortages. There's no earthquakes apart from the ones that you're causing. There's no lawlessness. There's no wickedness. So the good news can only be good news when you're surrounded by bad news. So is it a coincidence that when Jesus saw ahead 2,000 years, that he saw that the world was full of bad news, and then the important message of the good news of the kingdom would stand out in a world of bad news? I don't think so. I would have thought, to be honest with you, for the good news to stand out, you'd have to manoeuvre events for there to be a lot of bad things going on. Which is why, when obviously Tony Morris said the pandemic is one of the signs of the last days, you have to think about, has Jehovah and Jesus, you know, have they manoeuvred things in also creating the virus, that all of a sudden that people would want the good news, that people out there would go, please, and faint out of fear of what's going to happen on this earth. Give me some good news. So people would say, yes, this is the good news. This is the hope that Jesus and Jehovah do. So in that case, Jehovah and Jesus are responsible for the creation of COVID-19. The second other choice is Satan's responsible for the creation of COVID-19, because basically he created it to try and wipe out as many Jehovah's Witnesses as he could. Good job, 25,000 of them. Why he never thought of doing this at the beginning, early stages of Jehovah's Witnesses? He could have maybe wiped them out and there would never be any Jehovah's Witnesses. Early Bible students Early pandemic, killed them all. I know there was a Spanish flu, but we could. Early pandemic, killed them all. No more Bible students to Jehovah's Witnesses. And why did it take 100 years for Satan all of a sudden to think COVID-19? This is a great idea. I've been trying to influence governments and kings and tyrants to stop the preaching work, to lock up Jehovah's Witnesses, to close down Kingdom Halls, to end this good news of the kingdom getting preached. And he's trying to manoeuvre this guy and get this guy in and get this guy, because this is what Jehovah's Witnesses say. These people who are in government have been influenced by Satan and the demons to lock away God's people, Jehovah's Witnesses. All of a sudden, we have 337 congregations wiped out in the face of this earth in 2 years without anybody having to pass a law or use force or torture or prison. You fantastic if you're Satan the devil and you want to try and close down Jehovah's Witnesses. Brilliant. So is he to blame for this? Well, I don't think so. So we go on to point number 3, that COVID was man-made by man in a lab and release. Well, possibly that happened. Or point number 4, COVID is a naturally occurring virus, like viruses have been with us for thousands of years, different, pandemics and plagues that we've had, and it's just one of these things that happened. Either way of those scenarios, going back to what Gerrit Losch has to say is, back in Bible times, his true people were protected by these viruses because they were faithful, and Jehovah did not want his people to be inflicted by these diseases. So you have to ask yourself, the question is why? Why are Jehovah's Witnesses no longer protected the way that he used to protect his people in Bible times? It seems to me very obvious. Why? The fact that the Kingdom Halls have closed down, the fact that of ever in man's history did we need people to have answers, to be actually protected and going out and telling us what was truly going on in the world. It's now. For all the time that I was witnessing and preaching, I kid you not, if you went right now with a special issue about COVID or a leaflet, showing that Jehovah's Witnesses that COVID was predicted, that Jehovah's people are protected from it, what a fine witness that would be. Yet according to the wee thing that Morris did, the only fine witness is inactive ones coming back. And also the fact that in some country in Europe, it might have been Belgium, or it was one of these, no, it wasn't Belgium, it's like Eastern European country, that a workplace said, if you haven't got your jags, you can't work for me. Apparently sacked everybody, apart from the one person who was a Jehovah's Witness who's had her vaccines, and they said, oh, it's unusual for a woman to have her jags. Is there anybody else you know? And she said, oh yes, I know all the rest of the Jehovah's Witnesses, you just have the jags too. And the guy managed to fill up most of his vacant positions by hiring Jehovah's Witnesses and a Bible study to replace the people he'd sacked. And Tony Morris goes on to say, what a fine witness that was. No, it's not. I'm sure the owner of the business, all of a sudden, it doesn't say, by the way, and in this, the owner of the business decided to have a Bible study, he got converted, became a Jehovah's Witness, his family came in, and they've all got their own avatars in the Meta Kingdom Hall. No, that didn't happen. It's not a fine witness at all, Tony. It's just a case of, somebody decided to say, if you haven't got your jags, you can't work here. Does anybody know anybody's got any jags? You know quite a few. Right, you're here. That's it. That is not a fine witness. How can you get some positiveness out of that when you've lost 25,000 members worldwide? Well, there's been no protection from your God, and when you have been telling and repeatedly saying for years and years and years that Jehovah will not test you upon what you can take, that it will offer you protection, to throw your burdens on Jehovah, all those things that we were told, and they're still told today, even still saying today, don't be afraid. My God, 25,000 people have died. They should be absolutely terrified. They can't go to the Kingdom Halls. They can't go preaching anymore. Jehovah's Witnesses as an entity, as a movement, are dead. Because if Jehovah's Witnesses don't preach, what are they? They're just another religious group who now meet online, and that's it. and contact form members. They're just the same now as any other religious group, because what stood them out different to any other group that they used to say was that to prove that they were getting blessed by Jehovah, because he was blessing their preaching work. And now their preaching work doesn't exist. You can't see Jehovah's Witnesses for hide or hair. You cannot see them. So that would suggest is, if the proof of Jehovah's Witnesses, of Jehovah blessing Jehovah's Witnesses is making them, enable them to preach even under the most trying circumstances, and over the past 2 years they're not preaching, that would suggest that maybe he's no longer blessing them. And as Gerrit Losch said, that he protected the Israelites because they were faithful. Maybe Jehovah's Witnesses should be looking at themselves now and saying, maybe we've been unfaithful. Maybe the governing body have done something. Maybe Jehovah's no longer offering us any protection at all, because 25,000 of us have died. 337 congregations worth of people have gone over 2 years. That's a hell of a lot of empty Kingdom Halls. The Kingdom Halls we can't even go to, and the preaching work is at an end. And we just have our Zoom meetings in the Meta Kingdom Hall. And that is that. You must wonder, after all the rubbish that Jehovah's Witnesses have been fed for years and years and years about their people being a protected special people, you must wonder when these 25,000 people who were taking their last struggling breaths before they died. I can only imagine, and I've had COVID myself, and luckily I've had COVID not long ago, just a number of weeks ago, and luckily I'd taken all my jags and the booster jag, and I think that's what protected me from getting it serious. You can imagine these 25,000 who died, who had taken their last breath, and they must have been thinking to themselves, and many of these people would have died alone, with not a loved one to offer them comfort in the end. They must be thinking what Jesus thought when he was being crucified or on the cross or impaled, or however you want to put it. He must be thinking, my God, why have you forsaken me? And that's what Jehovah's Witnesses must seriously think about today. Why has their God forsaken them and allowed 25,000 of them to die, the closure of every Kingdom Hall, and the shutting down of the preaching work? When, bizarrely, with Jehovah God, all things are possible. With Jehovah God, nothing is impossible, and it is not possible to go preaching, to go meeting in the Kingdom Hall, and to avoid dying from COVID if you're unlucky. Anyway, that's my video for today. And yeah, if you've stuck along to the end of it, well done you. Well done you. But it's not really a laughing matter, but at the end of the day it is sad. And if we can use that figure to wake up our friends and our relatives who are still witnesses, and just ask them the question, where's the protection? Maybe these deaths aren't in vain. But 25,000, it's a terrible figure. It's like a whole district convention's worth just gone in 2 years, and when will this end? We'll never know. Anyway, see you later. Bye.